that he's just, a wonderful leader in new ways, along with his wife, Vivian. Rene Roth has been practicing as a homeopath naturopath for 31 years, and along with his wife Vivian, who has been practicing for 27 years, so that's 58 years combined experience that they've had with naturopathic and homeopathic. But in that time, in the 17 years when they joined New Way 17 years ago, they joined because I believe it was through a bottle of Maximol that was given to Vivian, and that's another story, but she saw great belief in that very quickly. Maybe if Rene has time through the webinar, he may share that. But also, when they saw what New Ways had to offer, they saw that it was it had to be something that their family and their home had to have, and they've never looked back. They have developed very strong belief with the New Ways products, especially the nutrition, with the great findings that they've seen with their patients. And, when you've got practitioners who have great belief, because they see sick people every day, more so than what we do, and seeing what these products can do, they've become very passionate with educating us all. And Rene and Vivian have won, some of the top awards in New Ways, and that's because they've gone out there to share this information out of the clinic. And like Rene and Vivian say, that they can reach more people out through a social marketing network than they can in the clinic. In the clinic, it's hour by hour, one-to-one, but being involved with New Ways, they can reach many more people. So for me, it's a great pleasure to be able to work alongside Vivian and Rene, along with our teams. And tonight, Rene will be presenting tonight's webinar on allergies, irritations, and sensitivities, and what we can do, and the truth about allergies and the effective safe remedies. He's going to share with us the eczema triggers and treatments, hay fever, sinus, celiac, and how to manage them for good and healthy home, healthy family with New Ways, and how we can take control and don't let the allergies rule our life and spring clean our home and our health right now. So further ado, over to you, Rene, and look forward to hearing what you've got to share.
Thanks so much for that, Helene. Certainly my objective tonight is to be able to offer all the people joining us on the webinar, and welcome to everyone, some basic understanding of what allergies are, how we develop allergies, and most importantly, some really simple practical solutions to deal with them. And often when we think of allergy, we think of more the hay fever type scenario, and certainly in the past we've focused on more the asthma and hay fever. But today we're also going to focus on a bit more around food allergies too, because this is what I'm finding in my practice. Over recent years, this has been an increasingly clinical problem that we find being presented in the practice, about whether it's gluten issues, it's perhaps fructose malabsorption problems, it's sensitivity to amines and salicylates and so forth. So I'm going to touch on some of that as well. The internet is also a great resource to access information, but it's also a bit of a minefield out there. So I hope I can really offer you something that's really practical and simple. There'll be a little bit of detail, so for those who need a little bit of science, we've got a little bit of that, not too much, because I really want to focus on the benefits. So from the scientific aspect, just take a little bit of that and understand that there is a scientific reason as to why we develop allergies and what happens from a pathophysiological standpoint. So let's have a little bit of a look at that, but hey, particularly let's focus on the solutions that we can offer each and every one of you. So first of all, what is an allergy? So an allergy is a disorder of the immune system. So if we have that idea, oh, okay, something's happening in the immune system, so clearly we need to get to root causes. We need to restore immune function. So in essence, it's a disease of impaired immune regulation. And sometimes you'll hear the word atopy, which basically is that allergic state. Someone who is atopic or suffers with atopy, they typically got the eczema and the rhinitis, or the hay fever type symptoms all combined in one. And we see that as a frequent phenomenon in practice. So what can we be allergic to? Well, allergic reactions occur to environmental substances known as allergens. So the particular particle, whether it's food or dust or pollen, is known as the allergen. And these reactions are acquired, predictable, rapid, sometimes not so predictable, but particularly allergy occurs in one of four forms of hypersensitivity. So there are 4 types of hypersensitivity, and type 1 is particularly what we're looking at today, is characterized by excessive activation of certain white blood cells resulting in extreme inflammatory response. And when we want to get an idea of the lymphatic system, and this just gives you an area of the multiple parts of the body that actually get mobilized when we're exposed to certain allergens in the environment. Now the thing is, we all know someone who perhaps suffers with hay fever and perhaps you don't. Maybe you know someone who's sensitive to gluten and you don't. So what it is, these allergens are typically what we would say are innocuous. They're harmless to most people. But for some people, and for known and unknown reasons, people develop a hypersensitive reaction to them. And so it's something characteristic about that particular individual which makes them more reactive. And so it's some part of this immune system, immune dysfunction, that is allowing for this excessive response to happen. So the mobilization of the lymphatic system by virtue of the thymus gland, the bone marrow, there we go, the bone marrow, the adenoids and the tonsils, the spleen, the appendix, but also what's known as gut, the gastro or the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and which is particularly in our intestines. Now, this actually accounts for 90% of our immune system, so it makes clear and obvious sense that whether you have maybe a poor immune system of repeated infections, or, and that we would say is an issue of T helper cells, one, being diminished in their function and supporting the body to defend itself, that it would make good sense to support the immune system. Whereas someone who has an allergic issue, T helper cells too are increased in their production. And so there is this imbalance, and we've got some charts to just demonstrate that. So this is type 1 cell-mediated immunity. The classic example is this in this type 1. But there are 4 types of hypersensitivities. We're not going to go into detail because it's not a science lecture or a biology lecture. We want this to be very practical. So here we have the T helper cells, 1, and which basically support our defense against the noxious things in our environment, we might say, the viruses, the bacteria, fungi, and the innocuous things are often the allergens, whether it's the dust mite and the pollens and so forth. For most people, they don't have an issue. So everything is in balance when we react appropriately. But when we have this hypersensitive reaction, this is when we see an increase in the T2 helper cells. So your body is actually mistakenly identifying it as being a threat. This innocuous substance is a threat like the pollen, and your immune system actually wants to destroy it. And in this activation of seek and destroy, it creates this excessive reaction. And this is where you get then inflammation, and you get, if it's skin, obviously, you get the eczema type reactions with redness and itching, edema, perhaps even hives and so forth. So we're having this excessive response, and what happens when this allergy situation occurs, you can see a concomitant decrease in the T1 helper cells, and so these people are then prone to secondary infections. In fact, I saw something, not that I watch the news that often, but I did actually see tonight, they were talking about asthma and how they were finding, giving antibiotics to people with asthma, that they were having an interestingly excellent result, or an improved result, because they are now finding that asthma is an issue in terms of, just go back there, in terms of reaction to the bacteria. So that creates an allergy to an inappropriate response to bacteria is causing this allergic response. So by treating people with antibiotics, they're finding a benefit there. But what that also has implications for us, which we're already doing. We will often treat asthma patients with immune support. So it's actually helping from a infective level, but also an allergic level. So we're seeing often good results in that regard. So that was interesting to certainly observe that on the news today. So health problems rarely occur in isolation or for obvious reasons. If the immune system is compromised, leading to susceptibility to infections, what is causing imbalance? So here we have this seesaw. TH2 is high, so that's the allergic response. The immune response from infection level is low. So often we'll find people who have infections are predisposed to allergies, people who have allergies are predisposed to infections. And so this is this interplay. So we're able to often in practice deal with both of these aspects of this inappropriate immune response. So it's all about, at the end of the day, regaining balance and quietening down this excessive hypersensitive reaction that many people demonstrate. So what are some of the common expressions of atopy or allergy? So eczema, definitely, hives and hay fever, asthma, food allergies, as I said earlier, is increasingly an issue. Reactions to the venom of insect stings, such as wasps and bees. You know, we know some people who have an excessive reaction to a wasp or a bee sting or a bull ant bite, and they have to be guarded by their subsequent exposure because it could actually be an anaphylactic type response, which could be life-threatening. But mild allergies like hay fever are highly prevalent in the human population and cause symptoms such as the allergic conjunctivitis, like the typical hay fever symptoms, where there's itching and sneezing, there's catarrh, there's mucus, there's irritated eyes and nose, such as the allergic rhinitis. So when it's hay fever, we see that as the typical seasonal issue around springtime, and also we know that cup day typically is probably the peak time of hay fever season. But for some people, they have 365, 24/7 allergic rhinitis, where each and every day they're suffering with like chronic hay fever-like symptoms. So we say that's allergic rhinitis. And unfortunately, some people may have the extreme reactions I just alluded to a moment ago, where there is a severe life-threatening anaphylactic reaction, where they say that might happen in the larynx, and you have edema and swelling. So basically what happens there, you reduce the diameter for the passage of air, and essentially they asphyxiate. So what the treatment there, and many people have EpiPens, and so that's epinephrine or adrenaline. And so this is a treatment strategy, and I know I've said many a time, and I do repeat myself again, I had a mother in practice, this goes back even a couple of years now, 26 kids in the classroom, she said, and 13 of them had EpiPens. That means 13 of them were anaphylactic to whether it was peanuts or egg white or perhaps shellfish or whatever it might be, because peanuts are certainly one of the very typical allergens now, and many, well, in fact all schools I think have banned kids from having peanut butter. And I often hear someone in our team talk about they have two children, 10 years apart, and she never ever had to ask the parents or the kid when her elder child, who is now 21, would come over for a sleepover or for afternoon tea or something like that. Does your kid have any allergies? But now it's routine with her young child who's in primary school. Hey, does Mary and Joey and whatever have any reactions to foods and so forth? So it is absolutely becoming epidemic. And so we have seen this increase. You want to ask yourself, when you were at school, how many kids had asthma? And whether you were in school 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, we would see less numbers the further we go back. So the geography, the goalposts have really changed, and something's gone wrong, and let's hope we can identify what some of those issues are. And this chart here, I think, really does identify some of the issues that are playing a role in the excessive escalation of allergies in our 21st century lifestyle. So when we look at this, and some of you have seen this before, that 50 to 100 years ago, our nutrition was certainly better than what it was. Our food contained a lot more of the whole profile of minerals and trace elements and vitamins and minerals. Your food was picked when it was essentially ripe, and so therefore we found that it was full of antioxidants. And also, when the food is riper, you have actually less salicylates, which I'll touch on later. That more unripe the fruit, the more salicylates there are. The riper it is, they're less. So the food goes through biochemical changes as it's actually ripening. And so what we're finding today is that our nutrition has got a lot less because of premature harvesting and over-harvesting, and then storage and freezing and processing and so forth. So there's a significant turnaround in the quality of nutrition. Same thing with the level of toxins. 50 to 100 years ago, our toxic exposure was much, much less than what it was now. This is both in the home environment, but also in the air we breathe in the external environment. You only need to look in Grandma's bathroom cabinet and there perhaps were 2 products with maybe a couple of ingredients in both. So in a day, Grandma exposed herself to 4 different chemicals. But you open a typical bathroom cabinet today, there may be 20 different products, and maybe there's got 20 different ingredients in them. There's 400. And maybe on a daily basis you use half of them. There's 200 ingredients you're exposing your body to. You're either inhaling, ingesting, you're transdermally absorbing. It's not that one exposure to these chemicals is an issue. It is the ongoing exposure which is a problem. So to remedy this, we really need to improve our nutrition, eat the best we can, get back to basics. And what we do need to do is to top up with nutritional supplements, good quality supplements, that gap, that deficiency that we're not getting from our food. We also, at the same time, need to reduce our toxic load, because it's that differentiational gap between the amount of nutrition you receive and the exposure to toxin is one of the main contributors to not just allergies, but it's the obesity epidemic. It's the autoimmune diseases like the lupus and the psoriatic arthritis or the rheumatoid arthritis and so forth. A lot of these diseases, and particularly even cancers and diabetes too. So we're seeing this particular correlation. So we have exposed ourselves to more carcinogens, more pesticides, more drugs, the artificial colours and flavouring in our foods. We're exposed to more preservatives. The exposure to personal care products, as already alluded to, environmental pollutions, but I've also added one in there, the Slip Slop Slap campaign, which was very successful back in 1980 when that was first released, for those who were around then. And it was very effective because there were concerns about skin cancer and so forth. So basically what you did, you slip on a shirt, slap on some sunscreen, and slip on a hat. Sorry, slip on a, what was it? Slip on a shirt, slop on sunscreen, that's right, and slap on a hat. And what that meant is that everyone over the last 20, 30 years now, and this is epidemic, has now become vitamin D deficient. So what you've got, the kids now, you look at an environment where kids go to playgroup and then kindergarten and they go to school. They're under the shade cloths, all right? They've got the Legionnaire hats on, with the long tail at the back of the cap, so their neck is covered as well. Their face is not exposed. They're wearing long sleeves often. There is no more sandpits often in these places, or ability for the kids to play with dirt, because dirt contains various bacteria which actually mature our immune system, so you don't become so allergic. And many of you have seen the Home Truths video with Ross Walker, and he talks about, a kid isn't healthy until he's eaten a bucket of dirt, because there are so many beneficial microbes and bacteria in our soil which naturally mature our immune system. So vitamin D deficiency has become an absolute epidemic. And I think this is, when you combine all this is the totality of the experience that we're seeing out there in practice. And we need to remedy it. So we need to improve the nutrition, we need to decrease the toxic stores, and we're going to go a long way to improve our health and well-being. So just a couple of quick things about the evidence. Increasing vitamin D during pregnancy can reduce the baby's risk of developing allergic rhinitis or hay fever by at least 15%, and by asthma by 20%. Vitamin D deficiency increases allergy and asthma severity in children, absolutely. And even in some of the other autoimmune diseases, we know that vitamin D deficiency plays a role as well. Now, just a couple of things to pick out here. Vitamin D deficiency and allergies. Now, Australian researchers have found, just pick out the things there in red, children with vitamin D deficiency are at increased risk of food allergies, all right? So not just the hay fever, not just the asthma, but the food allergies as well. The rates have massively increased over the last 20 years. Studies are finding 1 in 10 children under 12 months is affected by food allergies. That's a ridiculously high proportion. They found children deficient in vitamin D are 3 times more likely to have a food allergy. They're also more likely to have not just one food allergy, but multiple food allergies. And the rise in food allergy absolutely runs parallel with increased prevalence of vitamin D deficiency in pregnancy. Inadequate exposure to sunlight rather than diet is the most common cause of low vitamin D levels, as vitamin D is present in very low amounts in foods. So okay, so there may be a bit of paranoia about sun exposure, so therefore you do need to get it from some supplementation. And so, children's multivitamin with a little bit of vitamin D is helpful, as well as an adult is going to certainly support your immune system. Now, the other aspect, even from a fetal perspective, I already alluded to the toxins. Now, we know that even in the fetus, there are so many chemicals that they've identified and isolated in fetal cord blood. And this is a big issue. And here we go, 232 toxic chemicals found in 10 babies. You think how innocent and pure and pristine these babies are. Well, they are a product of the parents. They are a product of the environment. And all these chemicals, and BPA being one of them, phthalates and plastic components, these synthetic estrogens, have all been identified. BPA, as you can see there, is an industrial petrochemical. It's implicated in serious chronic disorders, including cancer, cognitive and behavioural impairments, endocrine system disruption, reproductive and cardiovascular system abnormalities, diabetes, and of course the asthma, so the allergic component comes up there, and of course obesity. So exposure begins in the womb. And so the mum and the father even need to do some pre-pregnancy detoxification to ensure an increased possibility of a healthy baby and throughout their life. And certainly this is something which we're all passionate about, is leaving our planet in a safer and better place than when we came into it. And we need to make a big difference. And the 10 million healthy homes is, I think, is an absolute key objective. Because anything you put on your skin, it only takes 26 seconds for those chemicals to appear in your bloodstream. Now that's dependent on the size of the molecule, obviously, of that product, but look at all the different ingredients, the cocktail of ingredients in any one product. Some of them certainly have a small molecular weight, and they will transdermally cross the skin. The skin is a carrier, not just a barrier, and they will appear in your bloodstream. And, just to demonstrate where all these chemicals and toxins come from, well, you only have to look at the personal care range that many people do expose themselves to on daily basis. So whether it's the hair care products, or whether it's the cosmetics or the deodorants or the fragrances and perfumes, they contain a veritable cocktail of ingredients. And, individually, they may not be necessarily toxic, but when you combine these together, chemical reactions occur. So what sort of chemical reactions are happening in your body? Harmful ingredients. Well, there's a couple. SLS, which is the foaming agent, propylene glycol. It's a humectant. It's antifreeze. It's in paint thinners. It's in many of your moisturizing products as well. You don't need these types of ingredients in your personal care products, and there's increasing evidence that they tamper with your DNA, that they contribute to reproductive complications. And, I only have to look at the sorts of ailments that I first was, I suppose, exposed to many years ago in my practice. We got a case of endometriosis every so often, cases of infertility every so often, or recurrent miscarriages. But those are increasingly happening more often, along with the polycystic ovarian syndromes. All right? So of a more endocrine disturbance, where we're seeing androgen excess happening in patients, in females, where we're seeing estrogen dominance happening, leading to all manner of complaints. And we know that the synthetic estrogenic load from whether it's, the vinyls and the plastics off-gassing, and what we consume from the plastics, if you don't have BPA-free plastics, our exposure is increasing all the time. So it's all these things which are increasingly becoming more toxic in our environment and toxic to the individual as well. And let's just look at the green one, because tonight we're focusing on allergies and sensitivities. So you can see anything that has green has potential allergic reactions. So there's acetone in your nail polish remover, in alcohol. You see it in coal tar dyes. It's there in formaldehyde. Crikey, why some products there in your personal care products have formaldehyde? That's a known carcinogen too. The red dot there, lanolin, allergic. Not just, organic lanolin may be okay, but, how often are you going to have organic sheep where they haven't been dipped into toxins and chemicals and so forth. So it's the residue in the lanolin which is an issue. The mineral oils, the petroleum oils that are in your skincare, a lot of people are having reactions to a lot of skincare products out there. Environment's quite harsh, so you destroy the acid mantle on your skin. And so that's a protective barrier, ideally. But when that gets destroyed, you're more susceptible to absorbing all these chemicals and toxins. So that's just an example of a decoder where many chemicals and toxins are lying, and they're in your personal care products. So let's sort of identify the problem. Let's have a look at some really clear solutions as to how we can overcome this whole range of atopic type allergy conditions. So strategies and solutions for the treatment and management of allergies. So we want to detoxify your home. We want to detoxify your body. We're going to look at some core nutritional supplements to support your system's immune system to return to normal. And we'll look at some specific nutritional supplements as well. So number one, let's detox your home. And what I love about this particular strategy here is that it's very simple to do this. Look, everyone is buying home care products. You're buying laundry powders, you're buying dishwashing liquids, you're buying sanitizers and disinfectants and window and glass cleaners and air room fresheners and things like that. So if I could show you a way that there was a company out there, and the company that I certainly endorse is the company called New Ways International. They actually manufacture a whole range of products which are hypoallergenic, safe and non-toxic. They focus on being not tested on animals, safety conscious formulas, biodegradable, recyclable. So they have a philosophy to produce products which are safe and non-toxic and actually do the job and work. So when you buy their air freshener, you actually have to use your finger to pump it. It's not one of these aerosols. It doesn't have hydrocarbons in it and all those nasties. It doesn't, go off when you walk past it. Those ads, I just shudder if I ever see them on TV. What are these people putting in their homes, these toxic chemicals that they inhale and breathe in, and they settle on food services, on your plates, and you eat off them? And you can see how many people are exposing themselves to these toxins every day and getting sicker and sicker. So these products are safe, they're effective, they're cost effective. That eco pack there on the left hand side, that is 6 to 12 months worth of products for a family. Very cost effective, very concentrated. Let's reduce the landfill. Let's by making all these products very concentrated. To reduce your exposure to chemicals in the bathroom, to all these allergens, to the toxins and these endocrine disrupting chemicals, let's embrace a mouthwash and a toothpaste. Let's use a bath and shower gel, a shampoo, conditioner, a shaving gel, a deodorant, and a replenishing mist hair moisturizing type product. Again, 3 to 6 months worth of products in that particular pack, and you can buy these individually or as a pack. Pack is easy, and these are very effective. And I've been using these products for the last 17 years, and Helene said earlier, I've been in practice 31 years, and so more than half my clinical practice I've been using these products personally, and also my family has as well. And the skincare is certainly an area of toxicity for a lot of people, and it certainly is a wise choice to swap over a lot of that. So you can see there, New Ways is a healthy home company. It'd be a great objective to achieve the 10 million healthy homes by 2020. And let's do this with safety conscious formulas, which are going to enhance our health and our well-being. So get rid of the toxins in the home. You're going to go a long way to remove those toxins and improve your health and well-being. Because at the same time, we want to detoxify your body. Because would you think it's a little bit of an oxymoron if you only clean up your body, but you still use your aluminium-based deodorant, which has hydrocarbons in? And you can Google, a 14-year-old boy in England dies using his Lynx deodorant. People having severe allergic reactions to the ingredients of the hydrocarbons and aluminiums and so forth. So whilst we're cleaning up your body, it makes sense not to continue to load your body with more toxins. So some chemicals and toxins are not able to be eliminated from the body, and they accumulate in various tissues, organs, and in our fat deposits. So there's a theory about your fat being like a nuclear waste dump. It's actually accumulating these toxins because your body hasn't developed in a short window of time a capacity or a mechanism to eliminate the toxins. Because many of these toxins we've only been exposed to over the last 3, 5, 10, 20, 50, maybe 70 years. Because we go back 100 years before the Industrial Revolution, there weren't a lot of chemicals and toxins in our environment. They hadn't sort of disseminated into all areas. So, and our bodies haven't gone through various stages of evolution and adapting or develop mechanisms to eliminate these toxins from the body. So they tend to accumulate. And so how do we actually then get rid of some of those toxins that accumulate in your body? Well, by implementing a comprehensive detoxification and nutritional supportive regime, some of the chemicals and toxins can be neutralized and then safely eliminated from the body. So we put together a strategy to actually facilitate that. And we want to clean up all aspects of your body. It's not just your liver, because sometimes when people think, oh, detox, I'll do a liver detox. Well, it's more than just that. Let's clean up your blood. Let's clean up your liver and your kidneys and pancreas, intestines and gallbladder. Right? Let's clean up actually all your cells in your body. And a really great way and simple and effective way to do that is to actually embrace what New Ways have put together is a detox strategy. So this actually incorporates a number of nutritionals. There's 7 products here. And this is actually the first phase of a weight loss program, but this is available for everyone to do, even if you have 0 grams to lose, or even if you want to put on weight. This is a strategy to at least just to detox your body. So we're going to remove toxins, we're going to flush them out, we're going to replace gut flora. So the lactoflora is a probiotic, ferroxin is a colloidal mineral, Protectiva is a great liver cleansing agent, your New Ways Green Key Powder is an alkalizing agent. So when you alkalize your body, when you alkalize your blood and your cells, you're subtly raising the pH. Your body will surrender the toxins. You can chelate them out, and they will be transported out of the body. They'll be marched out of the body by virtue of the detoxification ingredients in this particular protocol. Inflammase is a liver cleanser, a kidney cleanser, and works with fluid, and that's great to embark on that product. Oracal Plus is more of a cardiovascular cleanser. So with the array of minerals and vitamins and with garlic, hawthorn, lime tree, it will also clear out some plaque in your body. And Revinol is a very powerful antioxidant to also chelate out toxins in your body, but also to help neutralize the free radicals, the baddies that your body actually creates as byproduct of metabolism, but also what we're exposed to in our environment. So I would suggest to certainly go on this as a phase 1 strategy for your management of dealing with your toxins and in your system. Once you've actually done that, what I do suggest is to then scale that back to some core products. If there aren't any perhaps other issues going on, say you've overcome some challenges, you would focus on being on a colloidal mineral. You would then have an essential fatty acid and a multivitamin, because this triangle of 3 elements, your body cannot manufacture vitamins. It can't manufacture minerals, nor can it manufacture the essential fatty acids. So we need to get them from external sources. Oh, I'll just get them from my food. Well, sorry, that chart that I went through before clearly demonstrated that today we can't get all the minerals, vitamins, essential fats. So ferroxin is the product of choice there, the krill, and it just doesn't have krill in it. This particular product, EFA Krill, has chia oil in it, linseed oil, cranberry oil, and evening primrose oil. So omega-3, 6, and 9s in the right proportion, and giving you cardiovascular protection, joint, memory, immune support as well. Now, in terms of the multivitamin, in the stage 1 detox program, you're on the Oracal Plus, and many of you may continue with that. If you have children, absolutely utilize the Oracal for children as their multivitamin in appropriate doses. If you're a fertile age in a female, we would suggest you then transition over to the Endow Essentials as the multivitamin. There's extra calcium and iron there, obviously, for the female. So that's really core, all right? So you transition to these 3 core products. Now what we're going to look at now is some specific allergic issues now in some areas. So allergy now expressing on the skin. So this is eczema, this is dermatitis. We sometimes say allergic dermatitis or contact dermatitis, infantile eczema. The lower right one there is perhaps a hive or urticaria. So this might be due to some topical exposure to ingredients or certainly foods as well. So let's have a look at some strategies. Well, first of all, the symptoms of skin complaints. So it could be urticaria, it could be hives, dry itchy skin, a nappy rash, redness around the anus in the infants, redness on the cheeks, scratching and rubbing and rashes, and atopic dermatitis and eczema. So this is a whole spectrum of skin complaints when people are exposed. Now, I look at this a bit like, see, one person could have exposure to a particular allergen, and it may express in different ways in that individual. When an earthquake hits, right, it goes along the fault lines. Now, most individuals have a weakness in some system. So if that weakness is more at the skin, it will express more at the dermal level, okay? If someone's at the skin level, if someone has issues more prone to bronchial problems, maybe there was family history of tuberculosis and asthma and bronchitis in the family. So in your case, it might be a bit more respiratory based, or perhaps it's more of the gastrointestinal tract. So there's some of the three key areas that we will be exploring. So let's have a look at the strategy for managing allergy types of issues at the level of the skin. So a triangle here: environmental exposure, internal strategy, and external solutions as well. So first of all, if you can identify what the suspected or known allergen is, certainly it pays dividends to avoid that if you can identify what it is. Internally, we want to implement a nutritional support regime, and externally, let's have a look at something we can do actually at the level of the skin, at least to soothe it. External applications are not necessarily curative, but they're going to go a long way, at least giving the patient some relief. Okay, so it goes without saying, and you can see there on the right, we want to have the foundational core products of ferroxin, EFA, krill, and the multivitamin in the system there. I reiterated krill as one of the trio of internal management for the skin because it's such an important one, all right? When you have inflammation of the skin, a lot of the essential fatty acids will work to resolve inflammation, okay? So particularly like in this preparation of EFA krill, the evening primrose oil, omega-6, is known to inhibit prostaglandin production, which has a role to play in tissue, skin inflammation and pain and so forth. So that's going to play a significant role there. But let's fix the gut, because a lot of if we go back to the first few slides about the immune system, and 70 to 90% of the immune system is located in your gut, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, we really need to support the immune system. We need to repair and restore function. And two products like lactoflora and transfactor are going to go a long way in helping the immune system restore. And so let's have a look at lactoflora. So this is going to help, whether it's both a T1 issue in terms of recurrent infections or allergy issue. It will provide your gut with an incredible amount of good bacteria to help not just your gut function better, because a lot of people think probiotics are really just for gut function. Well, no, it's certainly going to help detoxification, it's going to help restore immune system, it's certainly going to maximize your production of serotonin and support your mental emotional health. So there are lots of benefits by embarking on a regime of utilizing this excellent quality probiotic and prebiotic. This is quite a unique product, dual sachet, pre and probiotic. Now, what is transfactor? It's actually bovine colostrum. It also has maca, a herb, in there. So bovine colostrum from the cow, the first part of the milk from the cow. And so this is very rich in immunoglobulins, particularly IgA. And so what we're doing here is really supporting your immune system to function optimally. And so again, so whether it's that interesting connection, someone who has asthma, prone to bronchial infections, so this is going to support both types of immune responses by getting onto this particular product. So let's have a look at the external management of eczema and urticaria and hives and dermatitis and so forth. So we have a product called Eliminator. It's very soothing and cooling on the skin, so a lot of people who maybe even have chickenpox or measles or the eczema will spray it onto the skin. You can buy a little spray pump or use one at home and spray it over the skin so it takes a lot of the heat and redness out. It's quite soothing. It also, if someone even has infected eczema, it will help because of the ingredients. It works as an antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral, even an antiparasitic preparation. So as a mouthwash, it's fantastic, but it's a mouthwash which has multiple uses. So you can use that initially on the skin. You want to moisturize the skin, but always first do a patch test. So first of all, on a non-affected area on the skin, apply the moisturizer, and perhaps you might choose to use the Rebound After Sun lotion. For a lot of people, that's their product of choice as a moisturizer, and personally that is mine. It's got some great ingredients in there, and aloe vera is one of the ingredients. So when you have this red inflamed skin, using aloe vera is going to be great to soothe all that heat and redness. Wrinkle Guard, rich in vitamin A and E, and rosehip oil containing cross-linked elastins. That's going to be very soothing and give back some natural oils, but even the Tender Care hand and body lotion is an option as well. So these are options to moisturize the skin, because there's also some evidence to show in cases of eczema there is a lack of sebum production by the skin cells. And so, hey, let's internally, as I said, let's give some essential fatty acids there. So let's get these all in your system and working out through the various layers of the skin. But let's externally support the moisturization of the skin so it doesn't dry out. Because when the skin dries out, it gets more itchy. When it itches, you scratch. All right? And when you scratch, you actually can create lesions in the skin. And you have an open lesion, it's more likely to get infected. So there's this scratch-itch infection type cycle, which for a lot of people, children, infants and adults, is the bane of their life. So we want to moisturize the skin so it doesn't dry out so much, so it's less likely to be itchy and it can actually heal. From a bathing perspective, avoiding soaps, because soaps are very harsh. They strip away a lot of the natural oils, and sometimes it's even suggested not even to use soaps, but put some, might even put olive oil in the bath, things like that. But if you do use a product, you want it to be diluted, very small quantities of Indulge, and we've seen people with itchy skins, a little bit of Indulge in the bubble bath with the rose geranium in there can be quite soothing. You can use very diluted, some aromatherapy essential oils, always being cautious using oils on the skin and never directly onto the skin, but it might be a couple of drops of cedarwood or geranium and lavender. You mix that into a teaspoon of water to help dispersion in the bath. So a teaspoon of milk, a couple of drops in there, mix it up, and then add it to the bath. And there's lots of cases where people have found lavender as a lotion being quite helpful. So there are a couple of external things. So bathing, be cautious what you're bathing in. Utilize the Eliminate, utilize a good moisturizer to help the skin there. So let's have a look at the respiratory tract now. So we can see a normal larynx, and you can see a good diameter there, but when you have asthma, allergy, inhalation issues, bronchial issues, or even septum through the nose, you have this edema and swelling, so it does reduce the aperture, and you are at increased risk of having asthma and or anaphylactic type issues. And a little bit of a joke there on the right-hand side with someone with chronic allergic rhinitis having continually this discharge from their nose. So how might this present? Chronic coughs, persistent coughs, rubbing of the nose, itching. So this is all about histamine release as well, and particularly as with the skin with the hives and the urticaria. And here with the allergic rhinitis, it's all about mast cells and histamine release. So that's why people are given often antihistamines to help with these allergic issues. So we can deal with this in a more natural way, and that's really only just dealing Band-Aid type approach. But the wheezing, the sneezing, the itchy, runny, reddened eyes, atopic conjunctivitis, and also the ear infections, the otitis media. So a couple of other examples there. We can see the laryngeal edema, the swelling, the allergic reaction of the upper lip, maybe even with peanuts or egg white happening. And as I said earlier, peanuts are now banned in schools. That shouldn't have to be the case, you know. People should be able to eat peanuts. Kids should be able to have them. But with the environment that we're in now, it's a sad indictment on the society of having to limit foods for everyone because a few suffer. Well, let's let these people know that there may be solutions. And then you have all the eye irritations, whether it's the allergic conjunctivitis or the pterygiums where a membrane starts to grow on the cornea, and it can actually impede the sight. So that's often considered an allergic over-excessive response to allergens. So what's the strategy and management plan of action here? It's about, number one, avoid the known or suspected allergens. So whether it's dander, or whether it is dust mite, or whether it is feathers, or whether it is pollens, or whatever, you want to be able to minimize your exposure there. But we know in spring you're limited in doing that. So we want to be able to treat the patient and treat them as opposed to the environment. So again, internal cellular support, we'll look at a strategy there, and any other ancillary measures to help in respiratory function. So you can see the top picture there, lady suffering with asthma. She's using her accessory muscles of respiration. You can see the substernal notch there, how she's that's all sucked in because she's really struggling with her breathing. So again, internally, what are we going to use? Again, your core nutritional products like Ferroxin, the krill, and a multivitamin. Transfactor for immune support. Lactoflora, again, for gut immune support. And Resperol. Resperol is great to help with the Th2 cells, the allergic reaction. So Resperol can be used for infection and also for allergy. And so this supports the immune system. Definitely a very effective, wonderful combination of ingredients in there to support the respiratory system. So whether it's for upper sinus as well, so for the sinusitis, the rhinitis, and the coughs and colds, whether they're laryngeal ones or bronchial ones, it will help right through. So it helps with mucus production, it helps with the spasm, and it helps with the nose symptoms as well. So a very good product to have in the first aid cabinet. So what are some of the external strategies for dealing with respiratory issues? So mentally, okay, so when people are having asthma, it's important that they remain calm, that they don't panic, because panicking is only going to exacerbate their asthma symptoms. But it's also a case when they're not in an asthma state to actually implement stress management strategies as well. It's often a great case for people with asthma to improve their respiratory function by exercising. And, you know, we've often heard that the swimmers, you know, many of our Olympic swimmers suffered with asthma, right? And it was recommended that they swim because it's a great exercise to support respiratory function. But some ancillary measures, if someone is suffering with asthma or sinus type issues, inhalation of essential oils can be helpful. New ways of put together a decongest blend. So if you fill up with sinus or allergic rhinitis, certainly head over the boiling water, a few drops of decongest blend in there can be very helpful. And combinations like cedarwood, eucalyptus, lemon. And for those who may not know, the Buteyko breathing technique, a Russian breathing technique, which is demonstrated to be very effective in the management of asthma, basically retraining your body how to breathe effectively. Let's move on to the digestive tract now. And so these first couple of slides is more relevant to the infants because we're seeing more and more infants with health issues, and it may present in colic, perhaps in either diarrhea or constipation. There's lots of positing, vomiting, feeding problems. The infant's not gaining weight, particularly when all other causes have been ruled out. They might say, well, this child is suffering from some allergy. Maybe it's lactose problems. I'm not going into detail for lactose, but breast milk and many of the infant formulas contain lactose, so they might need to go on lactose-free formula. But maybe it's something which the mother is consuming, and when she was pregnant, crossing the placental barrier, or even breastfeeding, many of these allergens can actually transition through and be transported via breast milk as well. So, you know, one needs to explore be a bit of a detective and to explore what the mother's happening or consuming or being exposed to see if that's having an impact on the infant. So allergy expressing the digestive tract, so some strategies here. Again, obviously, avoid the known or suspected allergen. Mum might need to go through elimination diet, or any individual as well for maybe skin things, and that's valid for all, whether it's respiratory, skin, or digestive, eliminating certain foods, and there's plenty of information on the internet about how one might implement an elimination diet. Again, we want to support the body internally and externally. You know, the little infant who is really upset with colicky type problems and gut issues, well, nothing better than bathing them in some indulged bubble bath and utilizing some oils of chamomile or lavender. And, you know, homeopathically comes up to mind too. And certainly as a homeopath, I know also there's a couple of homeopaths listening tonight too, that we would augment many of these strategies with some particular homeopathic treatment too, because the colic scenario, and whether it's chamomile or colocynth, things like that, can be very, very effective too. Okay, so the internal strategy for dealing with digestive issues, and again, digestive issues can express at the level of the skin as well. So an allergy to gluten or something might come out in skin issues in some, or wheat perhaps, or maybe the lactose, but that's often more gut as in diarrheas. But the lactoflora is definitely going to be an important place to start. And for an infant, they only need a little bit. For a breastfed baby, I tend to just use a very small portion of the probiotic portion of the sachet, you know, the back end of a teaspoon, and, you know, one portion of that sachet could last them, you know, 7 to 10 days. So just very little amounts. Once they start introducing solids, I tend to use a portion of both the sachets, and that will certainly help support and mature the immune system. Digestive enzymes are really key. Again, this is a capsule, so you can break open the capsule and include some of that in the infant's food, and certainly for the adults, they would take a couple of tablets with each meal. Because what we're happening here is that maybe there are some digestive issues, you're not breaking down certain, whether it's proteins or carbohydrates or fats and so forth. So this contains the amylase and the protease and the lipases and the herbs as well to support and improve digestion. And Nuvera juice, when there's a lot of gastrointestinal disturbance, so there's inflammation, there's irritation, new aloe vera juice on the skin for burns as is effective internally to soothe the gastrointestinal tract. So this can be very helpful there. And obviously if it's a young infant, you want to get them on little quantities of ferroxin. You can crunch up a children's Oracal and give them like just a quarter of one to an infant, and you can even pierce open the EFA krill capsules and squeeze that into their mouth or put it in their food so they get the benefit of that as well. Now, a couple of things around some of the most frequent allergies that are evident in children and infants, and particularly it says some studies suggest that maternal avoidance of the most highly allergenic foods during lactation may reduce sensitization of infant with family history of allergies. So if there's a family history, avoiding these things may reduce the risk in that child. But there's also a theory that having the mother consume these things periodically may build up some like, you know, a natural immunity, for want of a better word. But peanuts and shellfish and eggs and tree nuts and fish and milk are some of the most frequent food allergies that a child or an infant may have. And these are some other foods as well that tend to occur most frequently in infants and babies. And we'll look at a strategy in a moment how we deal with that. And in terms of the age of a child, an infant 0 to 2, they are the most common ones: milk, soy, eggs, fish, pea and banana. From 2 to 7, then over 7 years of age. So you just want to be aware of these sorts of foods, and looking at your kids or your grandkids and your nieces and nephews, and you know, look at what sort of challenges they have, because sometimes the food sensitivities are overlooked because they could express in different ways. Now, I do want to touch on briefly a couple of food other areas, and then we look at the solution generally for all these. Now, a lot of people have gluten sensitivities, and if you have an allergy to gluten, you suffer with celiac disease. And you can have a blood test, but though it's more conclusive to have a biopsy in the bowel, and this is typically an inherited genetic condition of celiac, and there are a lot of people out there suffering with celiac, a lot of people suffering with gluten sensitivity. Now, gluten is actually a protein, but the issue is that the protein of gluten, which is found predominantly in wheat, but it's also present in barley, oats, and rye. So if you're having, bread for breakfast and wheat bix for breakfast and oats and muesli, and then you're having lunch with toast and bread and sandwiches, and then you're having pizza base for dinner and lasagnas, you're getting a lot of exposure to a lot of wheat and oats particularly. All right. Now, if our wheat was the same type of wheat that we had 50 to 100 years ago, we wouldn't necessarily have an issue. But due to genetic selection and grain selection and so forth, because they're always looking at ways to maximize the yield in a crop, that the amount of gluten in wheat is 90% more than what it was 50 to 100 years ago. So our body was never meant to be exposed to that sort of amount of gluten. And also, when you look at in the past of primitive man, that man was more of a hunter-gatherer. And so to actually have crops, you needed to actually have a village. And village life really only began like 14th century or something like that. So our exposure to grains has really only been over the last few hundred years. And particularly today, how we see that everything is grain now. We're surrounded by grains. So our exposure to grains has caused a lot of these gluten issues. And I'm not going to read through them all, but you can see the most typical symptoms are gastrointestinal symptoms of diarrhea, constipation, nausea, vomiting, flatulence, cramping, bloating, abdominal pain, and fatty stools, which is the steatorrhea. But fatigue and weakness and lethargy can be issues. And because of this gluten, which particularly in a celiac, they identify as an allergy, you get an inflammatory process happening in the bowel. And when you have chronic inflammation, you then get fibrosis and scarring, and so you're actually compromising the lining of the bowel wall, and the villi get destroyed. And so this is why you end up with iron deficiency, anemia, and mineral and vitamin deficiencies, and particularly vitamin D and calcium deficiencies. And this is why they end up with osteoporosis later in life, because they've had chronic mineral and vitamin deficiencies over so many years. And a lot of people start to thrive when they go on a gluten-free diet. And so I think it's important for all of us, whether you have a sensitivity or an allergy or not, is to actually cut down on some of the less quality type grains like your barley, oats, wheat and rye. Let's change the needle of the balance over more to your healthier grains like your quinoa and buckwheat and millet and so forth. These are more high protein, more high in the omega-3s as well. So this is something to definitely explore. Something which we really didn't even hear of, more than 6 years ago, was fructose issues. There are a lot of people coming in diagnosed with fructose malabsorption syndrome. So fructose is a fruit sugar particularly, and for a lot of people they can't handle a lot of fruits, and they end up with the bloating, the gas and the diarrhea and stomach and pains and so forth. Now this is for those people who love fruit who are fructose sensitive. It creates a huge problem. And basically what's happening here is that they're not, they have either lost their ability to manufacture fructase, which is an enzyme which actually breaks down the fructose molecule. So when fructose in higher concentrations enters the large bowel, this is why you get the diarrheas and the pains, because it's actually, in essence, a foreign substance in the large bowel. It should be split and broken into the two simple types of sugars, and that's not an issue in your large bowel. So we've lost the ability to manufacture enough fructase. So let's restore the body. Hopefully it's just in a bit of a slumber, because we've seen people that have actually been able to tolerate more and more fructose in their fruits over time. And I remember a lady who actually utilised a lactoflora sachet, and she'd only been on it for a week, every second day, And she had been diagnosed for actually a number of years with fructose malabsorption syndrome, and she just spontaneously took a bite of her husband's apple, and an apple is quite high in fructose. And she had no reaction. He thought, that's interesting. And about 3 days later, she threw caution to the wind and had a fruit salad and had little or no reaction. So what we actually concluded then is that by restoring gut flora, by helping her system function more optimally, by waking up these slumber cells that manufacture your fructase, she was able to generate some fructase to break down the fructose in the system. So, you know, these people, it's not a life sentence if you've got food allergies. So, and unfortunately, so many fruits and vegetables are high in fructose, so it's very, very limiting. But once people get onto a diet, they can enjoy certain fruits which are low in fructose. And the big issues are the high fructose corn syrups and so forth, the concentrated fruit juices. Like, you know, you have a couple of glasses of orange juice a day or fruit juice. You know, that's probably about 10 oranges. Are you going to eat that number in one day? So that huge surge of fruit sugar is not doing you any good. And the management there is implementing a FODMAPs protocol, which stands for, if my memory serves me correct, fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And so particularly the Shepherd Foundation has put out a lot of information around that, so that helps people identify what foods, and it's not just fructose, because you've got also the galactans in grains and so forth, and lentils, which can be offending foods as well. So that's something to explore for those people who are suffering with fructose issues. Now, I'm not going to labour on this, but I've had a couple of people over the years that are sensitive to salicylates, and so a bit like salicylic acid that's in willow bark or aspirin, but certain foods contain naturally high levels of salicylates, and it's actually, as it says there, a natural pesticide to protect the plant against insects and disease. But unfortunately, some people are very sensitive to salicylates. Again, not all are, but some are. Why are they? Maybe it's the toxic exposure, maybe it's poor nutritional profile. So a lot of fruits and veggies and herbs and spices and tea are very high in salicylates. And this can manifest in all sorts of ways too. Headaches and migraines, skin complaints, irritable bowel type symptoms as well, bedwetting, cystitis, asthma, behavioural problems. Some of these kids out there, you know, being classified as ADHD, they may actually have food sensitivities. They may have a salicylate sensitivity. So going on an elimination diet can identify if salicylates are actually a causative agent there. And the last one, just quickly to touch on here, are the amines as well. Now, amines, amino acids, our food is made up of proteins, and for some people they are not effective in breaking down some of these amino acids. So you have these biogenic amines, and they are in high concentrations in the body, and they can manifest as behavioral disorders when you're not breaking them down, because when, you know, these amines can cross blood-brain barriers, so it can contribute to behavioural problems and migraines, irritable bowel syndrome, eczema and depression, and even a possible link with schizophrenia. So sometimes we've identified that it's, you know, schizophrenia is not just a mental disturbance from a psychological causation. It can actually have a physiological basis to it due to these toxins in the body. I remember about 15 years ago, I had a patient who presented with dementia type issues, and over a long period in time, you know, I was treating this patient, we'd sort of get a little bit of headway, and then we'd lose some momentum, and I thought, gee, I think she might even have a brain tumor or something. We sent off for a scan. Actually, they did find a tumor, but it was a non-malignant, benign tumor, but not causing her ailments. She ended up being, and this is 15 years ago, diagnosed with fructose malabsorption syndrome. So she eliminated fructose, and her neurocognitive skills improved out of this world. So it's sometimes quite fascinating to see where these food sensitivities can actually, and see how they manifest. So what is the treatment strategy here? And this is really important. So avoid the offending allergen for months at a time, because you don't want to continue to bombard a system that's already stressed and just perpetuate this cycle of Th2 being significantly modified or manufactured in your body. By avoiding the allergen for a window of time, our hope is to what we call eradicate cellular memory. So because your cells are turning over, red blood cells, 120 days or so, and other cells shorter and longer times, by not exposing your cells to a particular offending allergen for a window of time, you hope to shut down that ongoing allergic hypersensitive response. You modify the diet, you implement and perhaps the elimination diet, and again you can follow protocols on the internet. But what you want to do is get on the core products of the ferroxin, krill, and your appropriate multivitamin, but let's get some digestive enzymes in there, all right? So the amines, the proteins, all right? So protease is in that. So you're going to effectively break down the proteins. You're going to support the breakdown of fats and carbohydrates and other digestive herbs. The lactoflora is going to support your gut function, as will trans factor. If there's particularly more rawness in the gastrointestinal tract and the allergies expressing at a gut level, you want to include Nuvera and perhaps even durian, but not if they are fructose intolerant, because there are some fruit sugars in those two preparations. Chalamin Plus and Revenol, particularly for the wheat and gluten sensitivities, and particularly the celiacs, because of a lot of the scarring that's happened and the vitamin deficiencies. By putting them on Chalamin Plus with your calcium, your magnesium, your manganese, your iron, your copper, your chromium, and vitamin D, what's in there, you're going to restore over time some of those deficiencies. And Revenol, we know that can help break down some fibrosis and scar tissue. So if we can have the gut become more pliable, it's going to respond better and going to absorb more effectively. And there's a whole issue about leaky gut syndrome as well, and this strategy can certainly be valid for that, because in leaky gut syndrome you have the lumen of the bowel wall is being compromised, and you're letting proteins, for example, larger molecules slip through the bowel wall into the bloodstream, and so you've got these foreign particles in your bloodstream. They circulate around the body, and they will localize or accumulate perhaps in certain areas, and can cause, again, the migraines or mental disturbances, emotional disturbance, or even joint problems. You can use Reliease as a herbal remedy for the gastrointestinal symptoms of wind and gas bloating and so forth. Now, one other quick one to mention is our parasites as our mites, which is basically what this is all about. And these are, again, these are in your mattresses, they're in your blankets, they're in your pillows. So, you know, there's a symbiotic relationship with them, which for most people it's not going to be an issue. But again, the allergic person, there are hypersensitive issues there. But it's also other parasites of hookworm and worms and tapeworms and all things like that. So what can happen in terms of the parasites, and this is what's happening here, is aphinicils killing an egg, a parasitic egg in vitro. Okay, so what's happening here? The parasite, in fact, might create an allergic response. Their excreta, some people are sensitive to the fecal material, and when they die, they can actually release exotoxins as well, which the individual may be sensitive to. So it may be any one of, it might be the parasite, their excreta, or when they die, the toxic exposure. So this is where we'd want to actually introduce the product Purge. And you can see there, and I thought it was worthwhile throwing up all the ingredients, because this is an amazing armor full of ingredients of particularly things like wormwood and where are we? Wormwood, pumpkin seeds we know are very effective, the ginger, a pomegranate, the black walnut, particularly cloves. All these ingredients have been known traditionally to kill off parasites. But what's great about this product, it's not just for your gastrointestinal parasites, because parasites can be in your muscles, in your brain, in your liver and kidneys and so forth. So this has a capacity to cross various tissue organs and kill off the parasite. So you want to be on not just on Purge, but you want to be on nutritional support. So as you're killing off the parasites and these exotoxins are released, you're actually mopping them up quickly, like with your green key, for example, and be able to transport that effectively out of the body. Okay, so I've covered certainly some territory. I know we've gone a few minutes over time, but I really hope that was of value to everyone listening to the webinar tonight. I know we've touched on the hay fever traditionally, but what I'm seeing in practice is more the food allergies and the eczemas, and we need to get these solutions out to people. So if you're challenged by these things, certainly feel free to implement the strategy here. More than welcome to see your healthcare practitioner who can give you some more specific guidance along those pathways if needed. And let's hear your feedback. If you have people suffering from this and friends and family and they're open to getting on the products, let's know what the results are. So I'll hand it over to Helene, and thank you everyone for listening.
Well, thank you, Rene. That was amazing. I have just got notes everywhere, and I've had texts and messages coming through. What an amazing webinar it's been, and how much, it's helped people answer a lot of their questions and identify some things for themselves that they can go out there and implement as of tomorrow and start seeing some really great changes. So if you want to know more information about how to get connected with New Ways, how to get started, speak to the people who invited you to the webinar tonight, and they will definitely show you how to connect. It's very easy, and once you've connected, then you're part of this wonderful movement that we are educating, teaching, learning, and passing this information on to as many people as we can. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Rene, absolutely fantastic information. And before we all go tonight, we do have another live event on the 30th of September. It's going to be at the QPO in Kew, and it's going to be all about women's health. So, you don't have to be a woman to be there. It's for men also to understand their women, and we'll be presenting that on the Tuesday, the 30th of September. It's a 7:15 for 7:30 start. We'll go to 9:30, and again you're going to hear some really amazing information. It's a free event, so again speak to the person who invited you and they will get you support you and help you get there. And we have a great webinar, a great event. Philip Day is a medical journalist who goes out and does a lot of research and brings the truth to us, and he's going to be in Melbourne on the 30th of October and the 5th of November in Frankston. So again, speak to the people who invited you on the webinar, and they will definitely get this information out to you, and great events to educate us, teach us, and learn more about our health. So again, thank you, Rene. It was absolutely fabulous, and thank you all for joining us, and good night to you all until we meet again, and look forward hopefully to see you all on the 30th of September. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks again.
Good night. Okay, I think they're all gone. That was great, Rene.
Okay.
Really, really good.
Thank
I was getting texts and messages, and this is a great webinar. I've learned so much. Wow, this is fantastic. I need to talk to you tomorrow.